Hello, everybody. Welcome to Unbiased America Live. We're here again with our regular panel. Grant is in the hoodie, who's somewhat off camera. I guess he thinks that's some sort of an emo shot, and it's going to get him some girls, apparently. Yeah, look at there. He just went full emo. In the middle, we have Kevin Ryan, who's on his third floor of his palatial estate.
First floor.
That's the fourth floor?
First.
The fourth floor of his palatial estate.
Ah.
Just has to show off his white priv. And then we have Michael Lee, who has been making some scant appearances lately. We don't know what he's doing. He says he has a job. I don't know if that job includes stealing things from other people, but I wouldn't doubt it.
We're doing time.
He says, "Oh, I'm hanging out outside this guy's house." I think he means like I'm casing this house to wait for the guy to leave, and then I'm going to steal all the jewelry. But whatever. Shouldn't say that on air. Obviously, there's news today. There is yet another shooting. What we're gonna do here on Unbiased America is actually be more explicit about what cable stations actually do. We're all going to speculate, and I want Kevin to start off the speculation of who they could be. I'm going to go with they're definitely white male racists. What are you going to go with, Kevin?
Well, even if they're Middle Eastern Islamists, they're definitely white male racists.
Yes. Okay.
So, well, let's just settle on that right now. No matter what their motive is, they're white male racists. But
now, let me go to Grant here. Do motives matter in this shooting, or are they just white male racists? I mean, I think Carly Fiorina has a hand in on this. I don't want to.
Yeah, I saw
it here
the
first.
Of the NRA there. I saw the president of the NRA. I saw him. It was he was in the news videos. I saw him on MSNBC. They had a perfect shot of him right there.
Okay.
I don't think the motive is. To me, I don't think the motive matters because in a mass shooting situation, people are always going to have their motives to do something psychotic. Like if you want to talk about stopping it, I think you have to talk about that California. All those weapons in the shooting are all banned under California state law. The shooting where the shooting occurred, a government building, is it's a nonprofit building, but to my understanding, it's also like semi-government building, but it's a gun-free zone. Bottom line, and we've been seeing that a lot. And I keep hearing these people reiterating, "Oh, look, someone attacked a bunch of unarmed, defenseless people." You keep saying unarmed and defenseless people. You're leaving them out.
They're sitting ducks.
Attacked by the wolves. So you just leave them out there.
Let me ask you this, Grant. Just like you could legislate prosperity through minimum wage laws, or just pass legislation that ups GDP.
Yeah.
I say, hey, we're going to pass this law that makes GDP go up. Can't you just make a law that will ban the guns twice, and then this way they won't be able to get those?
Yeah, they need more. They need more laws.
So another law will do it.
You see, criminals they make sure before they kill people that they're in compliance with all laws. I don't know how they got those magazines. They held 30 rounds. You can only have 10-round magazines in California.
So what they've done is they put law-abiding people at a disadvantage against criminals that have 30-round magazines, and it's still not working. Kevin,
obviously,
what part did the patriarchy play in this? Did they supply the weapons? Was it their rhetoric? I mean, they speak very forcefully about the right to bear arms. This is clearly what these shooters wanted, irrespective of motive or skin color.
yeah,
Go ahead.
I mean, just the fact that they allow weapons in America, it basically means that we are oppressing minorities, and this is the reason that people die in Detroit every weekend. It's because of white men like us. So, but no, I really think that I think that what this Grant is dead spot on. Just as I came onto the show, I was saying they were showing that they have 2 AR-15s are the weapons. Now, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't AR-15s among the banned weapons in California? Right?
No, they're not banned. AR-15s aren't banned.
Well,
Automatics AR-15s are banned.
well,
Okay.
I heard it was AK-47, but basically the same kind of rifle. But under the current California law, when they banned them, you could, if you already owned one, they didn't confiscate it from you.
I know.
No new purchases was the law.
I know a couple of people that own them out here, so I don't know.
Yeah, because they bought them before the ban.
Okay.
So then would the call go out to confiscate existing?
Well, actually, California recently had a with their 30-round magazine ban, a high cap mag ban. They had a voluntary trade-in, like trade in your illegal magazines, and no one showed up.
I know that I know I have friends that have AR-15s, but they're they're not automatic. They're not set.
No, because they're not military. They say
Right.
military style weapons, but
It's a
what
rifle.
does that mean?
It's just a
AR-15 is
rifle.
not military issue. A pump shotgun is military
Right.
issue. A bolt action rifle is military issue. Like,
It's
what does that even mean?
It's a rifle, is what it is. It's not an assault weapon. It's just a rifle. That I don't really see how they can ban it specifically without banning other rifles. I don't. The way it looks, I don't.
It has a pistol grip, therefore it's scarier.
Oh.
It's
But-
black too.
Yeah, and the black color makes a huge difference.
Well, Mike, let me ask you: will that pistol grip kill you harder?
It actually kills you twice.
Oh, okay.
That's
so
the danger of those.
when the bullet hits your body, you die, and then it restarts your heart, then kills you again.
Yeah, exactly. So
Got
it's
it.
even more brutal, and you suffer for a longer period of time.
And
Can I just point out to you guys? Can I just point out really quick that America has more deaths by firearm than countries that have no firearms.
Okay.
Oh my God!
Doesn't that prove that we should get rid of them, or what?
Yeah, for sure.
That's compelling. That's a
Thank you.
compelling statistic.
Thank you.
Would you also agree that the United States has more deaths per firearm in the 21st century than it did in the 16th century?
Well, probably I'd go back to the 15th century before firearms were invented.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
Yeah,
But then it was all like bows and arrows and stuff. But
the
you know,
Second Amendment was okay back then though because they had muskets, and it's all about
oh,
muskets. Yeah.
but you know what? Seriously, the funny thing is that
I know people that believe
I have
that.
looked at murder rates over time, going back to like the 1500s and so forth. I mean, we right now are living in the safest time in the history of
Exactly.
the world,
Oh,
Kevin dropped out again.
including back to when there were no firearms whatsoever.
right. It's funny how people think that this phenomenon of one person killing other people is somehow new in human history.
yeah. This has
New
never
act.
happened before the NRA was founded.
The fact that people find it so abhorrent is testament enough to how much society has changed over the millennia. I mean, this just used to be. I mean, and in some societies today, this is still the rule of thumb. I mean, this isn't something that has really disappeared over time. There are some countries where this type of killing goes on.
It
I mean,
happens like twice a day in Africa.
oh, and you look at the Middle East, and not only are they killing people, they're raping them, they're selling them into young girls into sex slavery. It's really ruthless.
Back in the 70s, I used to kill one of my servants by 9 in the morning.
Yeah, you see.
Like clockwork.
If the breakfast isn't served hot at 9,
Yeah,
boom,
it's cultural.
Going down.
patriarchy. But I mean, it seems to be though to me that these. I don't know if it's the media reporting on them. I don't know if I don't really know because I haven't looked at any of the statistics. If the prevalence of these shootings have increased, and if the media certainly, within a political framework, creates incentives for these things to happen. I mean, if we joke about Carly Fiorina before the show contributing to the shooting because that's what they tried to tie Fiorina to that loon job in Colorado. I mean, they literally said Carly Fiorina's rhetoric led to this type of shooting. So this gives people an awful lot of power to have influence over a political landscape. If I go out and I shoot up the store and say, "Yeah, Marco Rubio made me do it," you know what I mean? Now you've just crushed Marco Rubio's chances at winning an election. What do you think, Grant?
I think they've started to realize that the power of fear over other people is very strong. And when you have someone that you can actually fear, you can leverage that to gain whatever political cause that you so desire. And I think if you notice how everyone's throwing around the words domestic terrorism,
Mm-hmm.
like it's just nothing, like we have some kind of insurgency in the
Yeah.
United States that's led by the Republican Party,
Right.
and that they're like massacring people or something like that. Like I saw people today on leftist, on like liberal feeds, actually comparing the like right wingers to like Al Qaeda and ISIS, saying that they are of equal violence and evilness.
Mm-hmm.
And you can tell that they're leveraging this for a political cause.
They do that for everything. And it's
yeah,
funny.
people actually believe them.
Let me get to Kevin and Mike on this next issue. The shooting in Chicago of the young. I hate using the left's term. Everything's black, everything's white, but this is how you have to
His name
talk.
is Tyshawn Lee.
No, the Laquan guy.
Oh, the police shooting.
Yeah, the police shootings. I saw the video. Obviously, the guy's shooting him while he's on the ground. But what you have here is you have a very left administration, where and obviously a friend of the president, and the DOJ did nothing for 6 months. I mean, they had to have known what was going on there. Rahm Emanuel it looks like a cover-up. He took it out on the cop, and it seems that there's some sort of double standard. I haven't once heard it mentioned that there's a Democrat administration that was running Chicago at the time. If you bet your behind, if it was a Republican, that would be all that you hear. They don't tie it into the Democrat Party in the media. I don't hear anyone saying, "Oh, the Democrat Party covered this up." I don't hear that. You would hear that if it was a Republican administration. What do you think of that, Kevin? Do you think there's an obvious double standard? If you look at Ferguson, the DOJ was in there 2 days later. The same with Baltimore. They were wrong. They were wrong on Ferguson. We know that. It looks like they're wrong on Baltimore. And Baltimore, 3 of the cops were black. So I don't know what kind of narrative they're trying to paint here. But
the first thing I want to say is that it was unusual because I think it was 13 months they had this video, and they didn't have any plans to release it, and it wasn't until a judge ordered them to release it that they decided to release the tape. And the day that they did release it was also the day they finally charged the officer with the crime. I mean, coincidence? I have no idea, but obviously they knew it was going to get seen by people. They release it.
Well, the judge forced them to release it. The judge forced them
to release it, and then come the charges, which leads to the question: well, what exactly happened if there was no video there? What exactly was Rahm Emanuel planning to do, or was the Chicago Superior Police? What were they planning on doing?
I don't know. What was the DA doing during this whole time?
The whole thing just stinks.
That's not. They took it out on the police commissioner. He's not the one that brings charges against the guy. That's not his.
Rahm can't take the fall, can he?
I mean, he looks like he's going to have to. I mean, if he doesn't resign, he's probably the most shameless individual ever.
Of course he's not going to resign.
I mean,
he'll be elected back into office for 32 more terms.
Right. I don't. I just don't. I don't get it. What about you, Mike? What's your take on it? It seems that there's a double standard here. A lot of these things, a lot of the social strife are in cities run by Democrats. You rarely hear that. If you look at Baltimore and Ferguson, both of them had, to a degree, and if you look at history, the progressives really, segregated a lot of these communities explicitly in the early 20th century. I just wrote a piece on the racial state at unbiasedamerica.com. Through governments, through lowering the cost of discrimination, and now we have these eruptions in these cities between the cops and so on. And it seems that this administration and the media try to paint this somehow on the right, number one. And number two, it seems that the president plays favorites, certainly with Rahm Emanuel and the media as well. What do you think? How didn't the media find out about this either?
Yeah, that's the interesting thing. When there's no political narrative to be gained, and in this instance, the Obama administration kept quiet. It's a Democratic Party in charge there. And, you got to remember Obama's from there, probably still has some benefactors and buddies there. So there was no political narrative to be gained by having the DOJ involved. If this situation happened in Alabama, they'd be all over it. But, yeah, in Chicago, the city run by Democrats, a place where Obama has close ties, there's no political gain in turning this into a circus. The only time it ever became a circus was when they were forced to release the tape. It probably never would have became one had they not been forced to do it, and no one would be none the wiser. The thing about this is there's always going to be a double standard with any of these issues. We can talk about the mass shootings the same way. You have a mass shooting in Paris. This was carried out by Islamic terrorism. But we can't talk about. We have to make sure that the narrative is that this isn't what Islam is about. But when a shooting happens in the United States, there's a political narrative to be had that the left can use, and they exploit it. And this is the same thing that happened in Chicago.
Yeah, I agree completely. And Grant, I kind of lost my train of thought here, but what do you think? A couple of weeks ago, there was a 9-year-old shot execution style. A 9-year-old kid shot execution style in the south side of Chicago. Nothing. Media, right? Largely silent. Yeah. There's kids dying on the south side of Chicago mostly every weekend. There's numbers of people dying. I understand the problem with a cop shooting somebody. I get that. But you have a lot of these Black Lives Matter people protesting that. I don't see any of them in the black, this quote unquote black community where kids are being shot execution style.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem to get their attention because it's killed by another black guy. Is it if when a black person's killed by a white person, do they die harder? I'm lost as to there's little children dying there. They're doing nothing about it. Absolutely zero.
And it really kind of destroys their own credibility in the eyes of the public, because if they were serious about Black Lives Matter, and I do think that they have a point, blacks have been treated unfairly by the law enforcement, but I don't think it's a fact caused by racism. I think it's caused by drug prohibition and the fact that, if you're poor and you want to make money, you're not going to really be so concerned with the costs and the risks if the benefits are really high, like with drug laws. So you're probably just going to start selling drugs.
I would disagree with you on that.
I
totally disagree on the drug war thing. I don't know why. We've talked about this on the show before. I don't know why it keeps getting brought up. I mean, in the 60s, drugs were prevalent. You didn't have the same problem with among black gangs selling drugs. You didn't have the problem in the 40s. You didn't have the problem in the 50s.
It's gotten a lot worse over time. It's exponentially gotten worse.
It has, but the question is, why has it gotten worse?
Because it's become more beneficial to them because the costs of poverty are rising.
No
government created poverty.
I'm not going to argue that. I agree with you there. But why have they remained in poverty? Why is it that the drug war or drugs in general, the sales have peaked in the 70s and 80s among black gangs as opposed to in the 50s and 60s? And it's a very simple answer, and that's the Great Society and the welfare state that kept them in poverty.
That definitely contributes. But insofar as blacks having conflicts with police.
Well, sure. Look, they
there's
every statistic will show that young black males commit the most crimes in the country out of any if you want to put people into groups. But what has perpetually kept them in poverty, first came the welfare state. Without the welfare state, without subsidizing non-work, without subsidizing non-productivity, you don't have them out selling drugs for the main reason that it destroyed the black family. You have young black men being raised by single women. I mean, this exploded in the 70s. In the 70s and 80s.
Drug prohibition made that worse because now you had what dads did remain who wanted to provide for their families going to prison for however long.
Well, look, but you can't make the same argument to black families that have remained together or families that haven't within different classes, you see, because they were the poorest at the time, were blacks.
Yeah.
They instituted so it destroyed that community specifically. And I think that the drugs were always there. The mafia was selling drugs long before. But the problem was the breakdown of the black family. No doubt about it. The drug war is an offshoot. Yes, they chose to sell drugs. They grew up in a home with one parent. It's really the breakdown of the family that's the initial problem. I'm not saying that the drug war isn't a problem, but they're choosing to sell drugs. I get why they're doing it. But to say that you're in a community where, you grew up in the United States of America and all you could do is sell drugs and to blame society, I think that's incorrect. I think government has some blame for subsidizing non-production, for subsidizing families instead of having families, stay together. They subsidize them splitting up or fatherless families. What do you think, Kevin?
Exactly. I did 2 posts on this in recent weeks. The first showing that the laws, the way they're written, the welfare eligibility laws, they reward single mothers and they punish single mothers who get married, and they also reward women who have children at a young age by giving them a much larger subsidy, or at least they subsidize, I should say. And if you don't have a child, you get less, in terms of just based on your means-tested income levels. So on that one hand, the government is dividing families, at least partially, by providing this subsidy and incentive for families to exist in a single parent format. And the other thing I wrote about last week was that because of that, one of the big buzzwords that's been going around for a couple of years now, inequality, actually, I've read a paper that says 40% of inequality, the increase in inequality from the 1970s till today, 40% of that increase in inequality is due to the shifting nature of the family structure and how so many families are are becoming single-parent families, and so you have a whole new group of households that have so much less income than they did when families were more cohesive. And of course, the people being affected the most by this, like we're talking about, are black people and black families, and it's affecting them financially. It's affecting the amount of people who get into crime. If you look at statistics for a child raised by only a single mom, has a much higher chance of going to jail. I mean, there's so many ways. You're right, Will. There's so many ways in which the destruction of the black family has led to a lot of the problems that the black community is facing today.
It's funny because if you look at I'll get to Mike in a second, but if you look at the wealthiest demographics, you have Asians, which have the lowest out-of-wedlock birth rate, are the most successful group in the United States. Whites are next, would have the second lowest amount, which is actually quite high. I think it's in the early 30s. Hispanics, I think, are at about 50%, and blacks are 74%. And it correlates to how they actually where they stack up within the economy as a whole, as it pertains to production. Blacks are at the bottom, partly due to, or mainly due, or I think, to the breakdown of the family. That can't be coincidental. Mike, do you think? I mean, I don't know why that's even controversial, but do you think that the welfare state certainly had these perverse incentives on poorer families? I don't think it has. And I also think people conflate skin color with this. It just so happened that these incentives were created for the poorest group at the time, which happened to be blacks and black families. What do you think?
Well, I've actually, and Kevin kind of touched on this a little bit, I've pointed out many times that one of the reasons that inequality has gone up so much during the latter half of the 20th century and into the 21st century was because of the breakdown of the family and the amount of single-earner households. The American family structure has changed so much in the last half a century that you're bound to have lower-earning households. And these people don't necessarily make less money per person than they used to. They just have smaller households. And when you bring up the point that, yeah, black people tend to have the most breakdown in marriages and single-earner households, they tend to be the most. This obviously is going to strongly correlate with more inequality. And the government transfers that are meant to help these people, of course, they create perverse incentives. And what you and Grant were talking about here with the drug war, I don't think the drug war is the cause of poverty in the inner cities, but I certainly would say it is a symptom of the overall problem.
I would agree, yes.
So, yeah, obviously the incentives created by government have not helped. And now you're incentivizing further breaking down the family unit. That's not going to help bring anybody up and bring any more equality to anybody.
Let me ask Grant a quick question. Grant, what do you think would happen if the war on drugs was essentially lifted by making drugs legal? How would that affect, what would be the step-by-step process by which the black communities would suddenly become less violent and would lose this disadvantage?
Well, first of all, gang violence is what is propped up by drug prohibition and conflict resolution, not having a court system available. So, assuming, private enterprises, let's just say we woke up one day and you could go walk into a 7-Eleven and buy heroin. Private enterprise obviously doesn't resolve conflict through violence because that's too costly of a method versus your traditional court system. But on the other hand, you wouldn't have so many fathers with young children basically killing each other and going to prison for a very long amount of time. So I think that would improve the family structure situation. I do agree that if we're talking about the family structure, you could go back to the welfare state. But I think if drug prohibition was just removed everywhere, states could still enforce it. But if federal drug prohibition ended, I think it would be very beneficial to them so far as reducing violence and reducing prison time, stuff like that. It'd be good for everybody. Good for taxpayers.
I see that this is a trade-off in social costs. I think it was Hayek who once said there are no solutions, there are only trade-offs. I think the welfare state here is the initial principal problem. And if you say that, well, let's legalize drugs, that somehow these people are going to coalesce into a broader society and become doctors and lawyers, I think you're mistaken. I think
No, no. I'm not saying they'll become doctors and
yeah.
lawyers. I'm saying that their families will have a chance at building a legal enterprise.
I don't think that the breakdown of the family
Be productive in a legal market, which is much different than in an illegal market.
Right, but the breakdown of the family came first. Then came them selling drugs, meaning that it wasn't the drug war that broke up the families. It was first the welfare state. So, let's say you do legalize drugs. What other illegal activities that they would get into? If you look at new immigrants arriving here in the early 20th centuries, you didn't have the same thing. You had actual families that were discriminated against, but like the Italian mafia, they just monopolized crimes, extortion, loan sharking. Why wouldn't Gaines get into that? They seem to be pretty business savvy. Why not get into black markets? I don't think that that's a panacea necessarily, though I'm not saying I disagree, but I'm just saying that I think it's a bit more nuanced. Would you agree, Mike?
Yeah, there's always going to be a black market, whether the black market's for drugs. And think about this, if the liberals get their way, drugs will be legal, guns will be illegal, and then there's going to be a black market for guns, and that's what the gangs are going to be running. So yeah, there's always going to be a black market. I agree with Grant in that I don't agree with the drug war, and I think getting rid of it, at least at the federal level, would be a great step. But I don't think it's going to solve all the problems. A lot of people think this is going to solve everything for the inner cities. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I do think that it would be a positive step.
Yeah, I think Grant nailed it when he talked about costs, and that was spot on. And the thing is to get rid of the welfare state so that people have more incentives to be in a family where the costs of selling drugs or entering a gang are far too high. I don't think you see many Asian kids going off to Berkeley saying, "Geez, I think I'd rather sell drugs." You know what I mean? I think that getting rid of the welfare.
I don't think it would be a solution to the inner city either. I just think that it would stop the bloodshed, and like a lot of the really bad stuff that happens in the inner city. Obviously, it's not an end-all be-all.
But there's no doubt here that rolling back the state, certainly with these social policies.
I just think that that's the most violent arm of the state insofar as how it affects the black community. And we're talking about this cop who shot this kid. I mean, the most violent arm of the state is the police state, and the drug war is really their most violent show of power.
And I've been looking for. I have a chart showing the deaths of police officers in America, and showing when it peaked, when it rose, when it decreased, and so forth. It peaked right during Prohibition. So if you think that what we have now is basically drug prohibition, and you see that the deaths of the killings of police officers declined dramatically after Prohibition was lifted, then you can actually start to make the argument that if you do lift the war on drugs, actually the number of police being killed will also go down. So it's not just black people that would stand to benefit.
Yeah.
Except for there would be less police jobs to be had.
And another we brought up in it. This is another topic I wanted to get to, and I know you guys have all written on this quite a bit. Inequality. We always talk about inequality as if it's a bad thing. People. Oh, there's so much inequality, or there's this inequality. So the fact that somebody makes more and you make less is necessarily a bad thing. I can understand arguments of keeping wages low or certain forces that could keep wages low. But why don't we talk more about standard of living rather than inequality? It seems that there certainly is a trade-off within society. And my next post on Unbiased America is trade-offs, that because of scarcity, you always have a trade-off, that resources are limited. So if you put more money going towards inequality, you'll lower the standard of living and vice versa. But isn't the standard of living really the most important element here? I don't see that putting any money towards inequality does any good. I think that a more objective factor should be standard of living. Grant, am I wrong here?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I was actually talking with a liberal the other day about this. And his argument became that he was no longer arguing that inequality is necessarily bad for people, as far as it affects your standard of living and everyone else's, but how it affects our democracy. So, like, if you have all this inequality, then the rich are going to bribe the government, basically, to do things that favor them and perpetuate inequality. Which, to me, seems like a pretty asinine argument, because basically what you're saying
I don't even get it.
is that rich people bribe the government to favor them, so we should grow the government.
So they're saying rent seeking somehow has something to do with standard of living. That's
Exactly,
actually
yeah, that's rent seeking the government, yeah.
right. So, but that's that's lowering the standard of living. You see,
And it's funny because I agree that that sort of bribery and those sort of corporatist favors do lower our standard of living.
sure, misallocates resources that
But I don't
otherwise.
see how
Right.
inequality ties into that. If
Right,
anything,
and
you're
this-
making a compelling argument to decrease the size of the government.
That's the same thing. Absolutely. If you,
Banned me from this page, I think.
it's two ways to misallocate resources by distorting prices and distorting the market, and putting money towards inequality and the incentives you create thereof, and corporatism or rent seeking, favoritism, helping one business at the expense of another. That's a misallocation of resources. We see this with the Export-Import Bank. I wrote on that on Unbiased America. Kevin, I don't know. Did you touch on this already? Inequality versus the standard of living. I'm going to do the post on UA, and I have a problem with, the guns and butter argument. Or the inequality as a society versus efficient allocation of resources. What do we want more? I don't think we should put any money towards inequality as a society. That government should do that. I think that creates a market for rent seeking. First of all, I think it creates a perpetual voting class. And I think that we should really just be focused on the efficient allocation of resources in the pursuit of raising the standard of living for all people. Wealth creation. Without wealth creation, how do you help the poor?
There's a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Demagoguery going around when it comes to the issue of inequality. Because if you take a look, let's say you have a situation in which everybody's income doubles from the lowest income bracket to the highest income bracket. What we should be saying is, yay, everybody got more wealthy. Everybody became more prosperous. Instead, I think that the way it's handled by the left in terms of using it as a political wedge issue is by saying, hold on, inequality just rose because, the top bracket doubled, the bottom bracket doubled, but if you look at the math behind it, all that has done is increased inequality. So to them, somehow, the lowest income bracket is worse off now. No, they're not worse off. We're all better off. There's always going to be a top income bracket that makes money, makes wealth at a higher rate than the lower income brackets, and it's not perpetual either. That lower income bracket, that's not a group of people that stays in the lower bracket for their whole lives. About 1 in 10 people make it to the top 5% at some point in their lives. So you have to understand there is upward mobility, number one. So all we have to care about is that we're all getting better off. And if we focus on that and stop focusing on this ridiculous issue of inequality, we're all going to start putting in place policies that are going to benefit everybody instead of basically tearing down the top to bring them closer to the bottom, which is essentially what people like Elizabeth Warren are seeking to do.
Right. The whole idea that everyone's skills are going to earn the same amount in a market, or that older people are going to earn the same amount as younger people, is ludicrous. And the idea that income brackets, or that income is wealth, number one, and that income brackets remain static is perhaps the dumbest conclusions to come to, and you're doing so without any evidence whatsoever, and you're doing so, like you said, in the name of demagoguery. Let me ask Mike this question. Is this really new, this stuff? I mean, if you look at the Industrial Revolution, let's go back to the Industrial Revolution, everybody's standard of living was rising. You had the antebellum South, or the times before the Industrial Revolution, the standard of living wasn't very good. You started to have mass production during the Industrial Revolution, people migrating towards cities for better jobs. And what you had was some people creating enormous amount of wealth, and you had these other people that were moving to the cities and starting to accumulate, obviously living a better life, or they wouldn't have moved to these cities. But you had books like Dickens writing about the smog, and I'm sorry, was it The Tale of Two Cities? I can't remember the name of the book now. It escapes my mind. I don't know why I did that. But he wrote about people migrating to these cities, and they were horrible. And you had these rich people, and you see that here in the United States with a lot of the muckraking. That oh man, there's these big disparities. We have these really rich robber barons. You know what I mean? This has been going on since the Industrial Revolution has been improving the standard of living for all people. I mean, we didn't get to where we are today with such a great standard of living, the best in the history of humankind, without first creating wealth through that industrial revolution, and we stand on these people's shoulders. How does the left, how can they not understand that, and how does the right let them create a narrative that somehow they're right when it's everywhere, it's self-evident, it's in front of your face?
Well, I think the biggest reason that inequality is an issue is because people think of wealth as the fixed pie fallacy that we talk about. I think this is the biggest problem. People assume that if someone gets rich, you know, the 1%, that's the buzzword, the 1% gets rich, and they make a lot of money, that has to come at the expense of someone else. So someone else had to get poor. And we know that's not the case. Just because someone got really rich doesn't mean...
Anyone else lose Mike?
Yeah, it's time for him to get a better internet.
Did you guys lose
Like,
him?
if you go to Walmart...
Oh, there he is.
Oh, sorry. Was I dropping out?
Yeah, you dropped out. Go ahead.
So the fixed pie, the fixed pie fallacy. One way I try to explain to people why this doesn't make any sense, and why wealth can grow for everybody and it doesn't come at the expense of the poor if the rich get richer, is when you go and you buy anything. If you go to Walmart, if you go to Target, you went and you enriched the company. This is a multi-billion-dollar company. You enriched them, but the reason you made that purchase was because it saved you money and it also enriched you. So you're not any worse off by making that purchase and enriching someone else. Yes, the value of Walmart goes up because people go there. Yes, the value of Target goes up because people go there. But the standard of living of the people that shop there and buy these necessities, these luxuries that they get from these places, their standard of living is going up at the same time. Wealth is not a fixed pie. The reason they made this purchase was because it raised their standard of living. So I think that's the one thing that you have to get over, is that just because one person gets rich didn't mean another person got poorer. Wealth can grow for everybody at the same time, even if wealth is growing for one person at a faster rate.
So you're saying that the reason people enter into voluntary exchanges is because both parties end up better than they were when they went into it?
Oh yeah, that's exactly the reason. But if you ask anybody on the left, I went to Walmart, I bought my groceries, and I came out worse off somehow, even though I got a fridge full of food. I don't know how that worked.
I mean, obviously they value the goods that they're buying more than the money that they give them. Otherwise they wouldn't make the purchase, right?
Exactly, but hey, I'm worse off because I got a fridge full of food. I don't know how that happened.
I'm actually worse off because I know Kevin, but I don't hear me complaining about it.
Well, you don't complain because you can't even afford food.
Nah, you've just nailed it.
And he can barely afford to complain, too.
I can't afford to complain. I can't. You're right.
Probably behind on all his bills. Look at that. He's trying to hide them all.
Yeah, I'm looking for this essay I wrote that I'm going to need for a test. But anyway, I always do everything last minute, and I hate you guys. We always get into economic discussions, and I'm always worried that people's eyes glaze over when we talk about this stuff. I don't know. I know that we're all interested in it, but I'm not sure if viewers necessarily are interested in it. I know we write about this stuff an awful lot. Do you get, Grant, when you write about economics, you get a lot of interest in it?
Yeah, I get a lot of hate mail. Is most of the response that I get.
Really?
Yeah, I get a lot of hate. You guys don't get like hate emails?
Oh yeah, I mean I get it in my Facebook. No one knows my email.
I get it in my email all the time.
Really? How are they getting your email address?
One article I did about Bernie Sanders is like on Libertarian Republic and on my website. Both have a quick link to my email address. So
okay.
Like probably like once a month, once every 2 months, I'll get some lunatic who sends me like the most bizarre email I've ever seen in my life.
That's pretty funny.
But no, we all get really good. Like the feedback that I see from between Unbiased America, We Are Capitalists, and everybody else, being classically liberal, we get great feedback about it. But sometimes I like it when I get the person who's like, I'm from another ideological spectrum, and you've challenged my beliefs. You know what I mean? And they like really appreciate it. And then I'm like, all right, that was a good day.
Thanks for sending me an email, Mom.
Yeah.
That's funny. So there was a lot of talk about drugs this week, I think, and people are discussing why, that drugs are so much cheaper in Canada, and
yeah, I saw that.
why that is, and I don't think people know that in Canada they have monopsony power. There's only one buyer for drugs, so they have they exhibit market power there. I don't know if people think that's some sort of a free market. I don't know. I'm not sure, but it doesn't make much sense to me that they pay less and there's also a lower quantity of drugs. So you're limiting the amount actually that there are of drugs. I don't see that as a good thing. I don't know.
And you know what's interesting is when people talk about lowering the cost of healthcare.
Yeah.
I always ask myself, what the hell do you mean lower the cost of healthcare? Is that lowering the cost of healthcare by making less drugs available or having less doctors available?
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is.
Distribute these costs, or
it's
just
the ration
because
approach.
what?
It's the rationing approach. That's exactly what happens when you move to a centralized healthcare system. You end up rationing healthcare.
Because we all know here the only way to lower costs is through competition. There's no other.
But Kevin, they call that lowering the cost because technically you pay less.
Yeah, or you're not paying a lower price. You're paying.
Well, not all,
less.
but you don't technically you don't pay less. I mean, not all costs are pecuniary. I mean, a lot of these people are waiting. They're in pain. I think it's up to some places. I think in Canada it takes 6 months to get a hip replacement. In some cases, you'll die if you don't get the treatment in time. So
it's a hell of a cost.
I hate when people say, think that all costs are just pecuniary, as if, Britain has universal health care. Yeah, well, try getting a dentist appointment in Britain, okay?
Yeah.
What do you think
Look at some smiles over there.
Oh, no, it's really cheap. Nobody has access to it. These people are insane. That's the conflation between health insurance, which we don't have here. We have health prepayment plans. But that's a whole other show. As opposed to medical care, and people think they're both the same thing. And I would argue, yes, that we don't have a health insurance. We have health prepayment. This has nothing to do with insurance at all. It's about I go to the doctor, they check this, they check my nuts to see if they're okay, and somehow my insurance pays for that. That's not insurance. That's
somehow they pay for that.
Yeah.
Somehow
they pay for that. I don't know how they're paying for it, but I mean that's not an insurance. That's me going to the doctor to make sure I'm okay. It's like getting an oil change. I don't see my damn Mercury paying for my oil change.
And then people complain that their cash wages are down without realizing that the cost to the company of providing your health insurance is just going through the roof. Why are wages going down? Well, because you wanted everybody to be covered by health care through their employer.
For every single little thing that could ever go wrong.
And your kid is covered till they're like 39. I mean, Kevin's
why aren't they giving me more cash?
Years old. Kevin's 350 years old, and he's still on his parents' freaking insurance. I mean, you know how much that costs people, in wages? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and now there's this move for universal, what's it called? Universal parent for pregnant women, universal family leave. Again, all that is now is another cost to the employer that's going to be passed along to the employee in the form of lower wages. Every one of these benefits, every one of these free things, all it is comes out of your wages. That's all you're ever going to see is your cash wages going down or remaining steady while all the cost of all these benefits keeps going up. So yeah, you might be making more in terms of overall compensation, but those cash wages, they ain't going up. The more you keep asking for, the less cash wages you're going to have.
What's really interesting, actually, is Pew a while ago did a study, and I posted on it a long time ago on Modern Libertarian, that countries that mandate longer family leave, maternity leave, have higher gender wage gaps. Yeah. Now, I don't really but the way they measure gender wage gap is pretty consistent across all countries. It's still a little broad, but the point is that is that they were able to determine. And women also have what was it? It was like lower attainment rates to like their life goals from like whatever their survey was that they do when they have higher maternity leave countries. So it's a trade-off. Which one do you want?
Right. And I think a lot of this though is too the underlying like radical egalitarian approach, just like we talk about inequality, is assuming men and women are the same and that they make the same decisions when. Women, you said the attainment goals. Well, women have babies. Sometimes, you have a baby unexpectedly. You're not going to reach the same attainment that you would had you not had a baby. It's like women make choices where their jobs are more flexible. For instance, I dated a gal that wanted to go to medical school, not to be a surgeon or a cardiac specialist, but to be an anesthesiologist, which is very flexible. where you can have a family. That's why most women tend to be nurses, which is a bit more flexible. You have a lot more time off. I think that people think that somehow, the white patriarchy forces women into these jobs, when it's really, there is a difference between men and women biologically, that they choose to do different jobs. And, this inequality crap really has to stop. I just can't take it anymore.
Well, I have some breaking news right now, and it's good news on the inequality front in terms of jobs that females usually don't take part in. Apparently, both of the shooters in the California shooting situation are dead. One of them was a female.
Wow.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So,
The matriarchy is alive and well.
Exactly, and they both had AR-15s.
Oh, it was AR-15?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
So good for her. I mean, good for her. She's breaking breaking through some doors. And
Now this is going to be, now what they're going to do is speculate on, if it's a woman, it's not going to be a white woman. It's probably an Islamic woman because, they're suicide bombers. And then someone else is going to come out and say, yeah, it's probably, a pro-life advocate. And then someone else is going to come out and say, yeah, it's probably this white, anti-SSDI person, white Republican who hates Social Security disability insurance, and that's why they shot up this disability clinic. And then it's this rhetoric from the right about Social Security disability fraud, and that's what started it. And wouldn't you guys all agree with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's going to immediately be watched. The narratives are going to twist and turn. And honestly, I hope it blows up in the left's face. I hope it blows up in their face. I hope some idiot goes on air and says, look at these evil white men. And I hope it comes back to bite them.
There's no way it doesn't bite them, and you want to create political narratives out of insane human beings. It's going to come back to bite you eventually.
I speculate that she shot up the place because she was making 77 cents to the dollar.
Right?
Well, now she's going to be a hero. She's going to be on the $20 bill.
Mike's not so far off. If it was women that committed it, would be men's fault, white men's fault. They drove them to it.
I know.
The only time it's the actual person's fault
this time.
Right. The only time it's the actual person's fault is when it's a white male. And then and if it was an Islamic radicalist, libertarians would say, oh, it's blowback. So it's never anyone's fault but the white male's fault. You see, there's always a way out where it draws back to white male society, that we're evil, in fact, and that's why everybody that is brown, yellow, orange, blue wants to come to this racist society. I get it.
You're taking this whole racial thing really personally, Will.
Dude, every day I hear it, how the whites are evil, and
the funniest thing is to me is a lot of these American liberals don't understand is the United States is one of the least racist countries in the world. If they went to some of these European countries that they hold up as examples of what we're supposed to be, they would see way more racism there than they ever would see here. These are some of the most racist countries in the world.
Over there, right?
What's that?
Just so people know, you have firsthand experience with this.
Oh, yeah, definitely. These are some of the most racist people I've ever met in my life, and they're open about it. There's no stigma about it. They are openly some of the most racist people in the world.
Would you agree that Germans are some of the most racist people you've ever met?
I wouldn't agree with that.
Germans, not as much because they're very careful about it now.
That's right. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Some of the Nordic countries, like the Nordic peoples, they're the worst. And these are the people that we're supposed to model ourselves after.
Eastern Europe, too, is very, very prejudiced.
Yeah, Eastern Europe, even where I was, Belgium's the same way.
Well, so is Asia, too.
Italians are really racist, especially that one. Right there.
Good thing I'm American. These freaking Asians, the Asians too, Asian countries too. There's a lot of racism there. Certainly, the Japanese hate the Chinese. There's racism within these other countries as well. There is no doubt, little doubt in my mind. And you look at the diversity in India, the Pakistanis, and the massive diversity there. After the British left, you had war and strife among these diverse groups. The Middle East, diverse groups. You have these groupthink. Everybody's a group. They're not an individual. Whereas the United States of America, built on individualism, is by far the most tolerant place in the face of the earth, and that's why everybody wants to come here. And the left, to try to paint us as some sort of this racist white patriarchal country, just doesn't hold up to the fact of the matter that people come here from all over the world. From every color, every country, all want to come to the United States of America. So what are you talking about? You're insane.
I've seen a statistic that they asked people in every country whether you'd want to live next to somebody of a different race, and by that metric, America was the least race in the least racist category of all countries. I think India was the most racist, or in the most racist category.
And that's where India has the most diversity. You know, this word diversity has little meaning. I've yet to hear any sort of thing. It's just, I guess it's diversity means difference in skin pigmentation. And I don't know what that to what ends that is. Just because somebody may be darker than me means that they're not American. I don't understand. That's lost. I mean, I do understand where the left comes from when they say it, is that they like these insular communities because when you have division, you can control people easier. Oh, you need the government. The government will settle these issues. You see what I mean? Turn to your institutions, you know, and that's why they like that kind of strife. Moreover, it's if here's liberty, to give liberty or to sell liberty is intangible. It's hard to do to sell liberty, but you can give people a check, and if you got to keep them divided, and you got to give them things, give them stuff, and that's how you maintain a perpetual voting class. And this is why you see this from the left. It's all they got, demagoguery and money, and it's our money that they take.
Well, I think that one of the things that I'm actually most proud of being from the United States is, and in my travels I've seen this firsthand, is in different places of the world people identify as part of their groups, and anybody from the outside isn't welcome in their group, and outsiders don't want to be a part of their group. You see this a lot in Europe. You're not a German or a Belgian, or you're not French unless you're a white French born in France. In the Middle East, you see people identify more as Sunni or Shia. They don't identify as Iraqi. Here in the United States, and this has been the case forever, you come over here from Poland, you come over here from Germany, and now you have more Asians coming over here. You're Christian, you're Jewish, you're Muslim. Everybody identifies as American. Everybody, it doesn't matter what your skin color is. We all identify as American. We're all in it together, and we don't have these racial and ethnic and religious divides.
Right.
At the end of the day, we're all the same people, and you don't see that as much around the world, and I think that's a unique thing to us, and that's something that we should be proud of.
You're
but
right.
We have to talk about how we're so racist when we're not.
Because it comes from the left, and I'll tell you what, my teacher, he's ethnically Mexican. That's his ethnicity. He
identifies as.
He identifies as Mexican. He's grew up in the United States of America, but tries to talk like he actively tries to talk with an accent as if he has an accent. Like he tries to Chicano. I'm a Chicano. And I raise my hand and I go, you grew up in Torrance. You're American. Why would you talk like that? Why are you? I don't understand why you're holding on to. Your family fled Mexico, obviously for a reason. Why would you want to hold on to that? My family came here from Italy and a small part from Ireland. Came here specifically because they didn't like their home country. My family didn't like Italy. They didn't want to live there. They came here to be American. Now you have people that come here for the same reasons, but come here and want to insulate themselves from the American culture. That's a white culture, you see, and he has to talk this certain way because he's a Chicano and Chicano studies, and it gets to the point where there was this one thing for kids, Latino kids with autism, and I remember I asked the person, why is it like for a Latino autism's different for every other person? Does it affect them differently? And these are the people that are divisive, that are dividing. They're sick. They have a sickness. I don't know what it is. There's something wrong with them. And I go, just because of your skin color doesn't mean you can't be an American. You're not American. I don't understand it.
And it's the same people that are. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Grant.
I want one of these bleeding heart liberals to look to find a Sudanese immigrant and look him in the eye and say, you don't want to come to America because there's too much white privilege. What the hell? They're gonna. Oh, really? Oh, that's your biggest problem? Oh, I'll be there tomorrow.
It's amazing.
Where if that was such a problem, where it was to the point where they make it out to be violent, like there's some violent racism in America that's systemic. People wouldn't come here. Why would they? Why would they go through the serious process?
And the best part is when they get here, they try to maintain their own culture. There's a lot of these front groups too, like La Raza. This guy talks about La Raza like it's the UN. You know what I mean? Oh, the law, it means the race, but not that kind of the race. It's amazing how they work language. You know, in class I said, what other kind of race? It means like, you know, like a community. The group is the race. It's not, that's what it means. The word means the race, okay, guy? Stop trying to get around it. And they try to insulate themselves, and they're so proud of it. So why then, I know that people, this is kind of like a mantra, but why are you here? If you're a Latino or a Chicano, why, Mexico's not far. You know what I mean? Like if I was like, oh, I'm Italian, I'm an Italian citizen, I'd live in Italy. I'll go move to Rome. Why would I want to be here? I don't understand it.
Well, I think you see a little of that still, even with the European immigrants. Where I grew up, there's a lot of Polish immigrants, and they have Sunday polka dances and Polish sausage and all this stuff. They maintain a little bit of that home culture, but for the most part, they're going to assimilate into America.
Right. Look,
and what's happening too is that the melting pot culture where everybody has a little bit of their own their own background, but we all assimilate. That's really what's under attack these days.
That's it.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
This whole notion of cultural misappropriation, as in somehow if I eat a taco, if I wear a sombrero or something, I'm misappropriating Mexican culture. What that ends up doing is it keeps everybody into tight little groups that don't assimilate, and you end up with a situation where, you know, it's more like Europe, where you have these clashes of cultures that are constantly fighting with each other. And I think that's the next. For some reason, the left wants to head in that direction, and I've noticed that lately.
You're right, and the reason America is so great is because we take pieces of each culture.
It's not misappropriation.
We take the best parts of each culture that come here and keep them. It's the bad parts of that culture that die out, and everybody coalesces around an American culture. My family has owned Italian restaurants for 60 years. That doesn't mean we're Italian. That means that we've retained the food, which is very good. You know, it's better. I would say, arguably, it's better than most other European foods. That doesn't mean Italy as a nation is better than most other European nations. I would argue it's one of the least successful European nations.
This is a perfect time for me to show this. I did a study that shows that as the amount of Irish immigration has fallen since the 1800s, America has become worse. So if you look at the 20th century, when America has been very bad, you know, we're a worse country, we've had almost no Irish immigration. Why is that? Is it a coincidence?
No.
It's not.
It's not a coincidence. That is empirical, and every statistician will tell you that is empirical in a world where causation is correlation.
And I don't know what my Irish relatives have brought to America, but it's got to be something, right?
Booze, probably.
You.
Probably cholera.
Famine and plague.
Thanks for the cholera, Irish people.
Terrible
whiskey. My mom would kill me if she heard me say that. But anyway, it was a good look. You know, I want to do some winners and losers, but it's a good show. I hope people like when we banter and talk about economics. I don't know. I know that sometimes when I post on UA, certainly about constitutional law, nobody gives a damn.
No one cares about that.
No one cares. I did congressional war powers and presidential war powers, and that was a huge flop. So I want to keep the show on topics people are interested in. Our winners and losers this week, I don't know if anybody's picked any. I know that Kevin is the biggest nerd on the show, and he probably was giggling, writing them down like last week sometime. Oh, these are going to be my winners and losers. So I'll start with him first, and I'll give the other two cool kids time to figure out what theirs are. Go ahead, Kevin.
Well, the loser this week I have is the press, because just from today, watching the constant talk on the press about this shooting out in California, you had people from the very get-go saying that this was definitely terrorism. You had other people from the get-go saying that this is an office place shooting, and there was so much speculation and no hard facts. Nobody bothered to wait or bothered to actually try to get some sources to cover what they're saying. It was a horrific day. I mean, it was just back and forth. If you went to CNN, they were saying one thing. I still don't know how many who these people are that shot up this place. I have no idea. And we're like 5, 6, 7 hours into it. It was a horrific showing by the press. And because of that, because they have not gotten us the information, everybody's coming up with their own narratives, like we started off the show with. You know, so a whole bunch of people think it must be a white guy shooting up, you know, another abortion clinic, and then some other people think it's Muslims. So the press really screwed up today.
That guy that shot up by the Planned Parenthood, he looked pretty like normal, like he was all there.
He was. He's like most of my Republican friends, actually.
No, he looked a lot like Ronald Reagan. He looked a lot like Ronald Reagan.
He looked just like old Ronnie. I thought they broke the mold after they made him, but apparently they didn't. I mean, this guy was molded, looks like a Ronald Reagan imprint. Rush like if Ronald Reagan and Rush Limbaugh had a kid, that would be what he would look like.
And I would vote for him too, by the way.
Big time.
I would vote for the shooter. I would vote for the shooter.
Yeah. And did you mention your winner?
Yeah. No, the winner this week is me.
Yeah. Duh. Patriarchy. We talked about it all show. Cool. Grant, I don't know if you have any, but go ahead.
All right, my loser of the week is Barack Obama, because before the shooters were even caught or shot, he immediately called for gun control, and that is just despicable. That is you don't even know what happened. Let's just say it turns out to be Islamic terrorism. The first thing you did was call for gun control. Like, that is just wow. And my other loser of the week is Kevin, because I hate him.
All right, Mike, go ahead.
My loser of the week was going to be Obama too, but for a little bit of a different reason. He got up in front of people in Paris and said that mass shootings only happen in America. So not only did he talk down about his own country on an international stage, he talked about Paris, a city that just saw one of the largest mass shootings in history, and said that things like that don't happen there. So my loser of the week has to be Obama. My winner of the week is kind of connected, because we're 2 weeks out from this shooting in Paris. So my winner of the week is going to be ISIS, who knows that they can do anything that they want without any American leadership, because we have a president that's too concerned about gun control to do anything about the most dangerous terrorist organization in world history. They're the winners until he leaves office, and they might be the winners for however long. If Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders are in office too, they'll be the winners for 56 weeks and more.
Don't worry, he sent in special ops, like 15 guys, and they're gonna.
They're a force multiplier of 4, so that's 200, and we're gonna defeat the caliphate with 200 soldiers.
And the bombings. I think it's 15 to 30 bombs a day, as opposed to in Kuwait when I think it was 1,100 to about 1,500 bombs a day. So I think we're really doing a number on these guys.
Yeah, they're scared. They're really scared.
It's like using a pea shooter to take down a giant, you know, and that giant obviously being me because I work out. Who's your loser? Is it Kevin? Shut up, guys.
I said my loser was Obama.
Oh yeah, duh. I mean winner. Sorry, your winner.
The winner was ISIS, who has Obama.
I knew that.
I'm just going to change my loser to Will again for the 100th straight week.
My third loser is Will.
My winner this week is Ted Cruz, who picked up an awful lot of Ben Carson's support in the race. My loser would be Hillary Clinton, who now has 999 cases of confidential transcripts in her personal email. And this is it seems to be getting worse and worse for her. Also, I think there was stuff contained in the emails about her mental state and why that time she had a concussion. The woman seems to be. I don't know what it is if she'll get away with this. It seems that it doesn't really matter how many emails had confidential information in it. It seems that she'll get away with it. But in a general election, and I want to get your opinion quickly on this, that she's going to have an incredibly hard time winning.
No, she's going to lose.
Okay, you think so? What do you think,
Yeah,
Kevin?
I think Bernie Sanders is going to win the nomination.
No, I think in the general, unless one of the Republicans does something really stupid, she's going to lose. Although I think she might end up leveraging her good looks to make it to the presidency, but I think definitely the Republicans.
Mike has some deep insight. I can see it here on his face. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, she's going to beat Trump. I'll tell you that.
I knew that was coming.
I knew it. A competent candidate. I mean, if you put Maybe she could beat Jeb Bush. I don't know, but I mean, if you put Rubio up there, Cruz up there,
shouldn't competence be judged by beating out all the other supposed competent candidates in a primary?
Well, okay, but you look at his general election numbers. Look, the slice of people that support Donald Trump is extremely small, big enough to win in a large field of primary candidates, but not large enough to win a general election.
Yeah, I would argue that he has a better chance than John McCain or Mitt Romney combined. I mean, and I'm not the biggest Trump fan, but I love the way this guy makes the establishment squirm. They're coming out with memos. How do we beat this? This is how inept the Republican Party is. I mean, that's what it's really exposing, is the ineptitude of the Republican Party and the establishment as a whole.
Well, I think you will see that, and this is the one compelling thing, and the one thing I'm glad about having Donald Trump in here is if he does get to the point where it looks like he might win the nomination, the Republican Party is going to go after him, and it's just going to expose how the Republican Party does not allow this to be a real primary process.
Exactly. And look, the people that benefit most from him coming in and making the establishment look bad are Ted Cruz and Rand Paul. And Ted Cruz ran a savvy enough campaign to pick up on that sentiment. Rand Paul's campaign was atrocious. You know what I mean? Here's a guy making the establishment squirm. Cruz and Paul are the other outsiders, but on the inside. And, Paul started off early attacking Trump. Big mistake, man.
That was his biggest mistake. That was his biggest mistake he could have done.
What an horribly... Then, look, I get his foreign policy. It's not much different, if at all different, from Ted Cruz's, but he paints himself trying to pick up a libertarian vote. What are you doing? Now you made Cruz look like the sane one that's in between Rubio and Rand Paul. So it's like, come on.
I always thought that was funny, where I would see these articles about, can Rand Paul continue to keep his father's support, or can Rand Paul gather libertarian support? Who cares?
What? Yeah,
why?
What?
Why would you want that?
Name one election where libertarians have determined the outcome. I mean, this is insane.
Why does he need to worry about that stuff? But yeah, apparently that's what people think he needs to do, and apparently his campaign is brought into that.
Who's advising him is my question. Who's advising? I don't know who his... I mean, anyone on this panel I would trust to advise his campaign better than the person who he has running his campaign. And I think I have a friend of mine who's close to the campaign said to me that Rand Paul doesn't listen to his those that coach him on debates or his campaign in general. That's what I heard. I heard he doesn't, and I wouldn't put it past him. As I don't know.
Well, he's not. He doesn't strike me as one to listen. So that could be true. Maybe he's messing up his own campaign.
And if you look at Cruz, here's a guy that was the AG of Texas and who went and argued cases in front of the Supreme Court. He's a savvy debater. It seems that he has a better grip on how to campaign. And I mean, whenever Rubio goes at him, Cruz hits him back harder, tying his foreign policy in with Clinton, which Rand Paul had done. And then here Cruz positions himself to the right of Rand Paul, and to the to the left of Marco Rubio, if that makes any sense. I don't know if that. In between them.
What Ted Cruz has done a great job of is making Rubio and Clinton look like hawks, and himself look like more of a hawk than the libertarians, but not so much that he's as bad as like the Bush-era hawks. He's done a great job of that.
That's the foreign policy I'm saying. Why don't we just do what's in the best interests of the United States? He said, why did we go into Libya? No reason. There's no reason to go to Syria. There wasn't, it wasn't in the best interests of the United States of America. That's just not our foreign policy. We don't want to build democracies. We're not a police force. I don't know. It's simple. And name one thing that the NSA data bulk collecting has done to stop terrorism. Nothing. What? I don't understand. But anyway, we got to go.
Hold on. I got a winner of the week. I came up with a winner of the week. In fact, my winner of the week is, in fact, Donald Trump, who you might not have heard this, or maybe you have, but he picked up the endorsement of Chris Cantwell this week. And he also appeared on InfoWars with Alex Jones. So obviously he's going for that all-important block of non-voters, which, I think is really going to push him over the top.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for Alex Jones to explain to me how the government had a tornado machine in Oklahoma. That's all I want to know. I've been waiting for that the whole time.
They did?
That's what he said. He said that the tornadoes in Oklahoma a couple of years ago were caused by tornado machines manufactured by the government. And I'm still waiting for proof of that. It's compelling, and I need to see it.
I don't know how he has more.
Our own Matt Palumbo used to write for InfoWars. Don't forget that.
That's right. He is famous, Matt Palumbo, and he will be on the Gavin McInnes show, I think, tomorrow. So if anybody's interested to watch Matty stumble and bumble on that show, go right ahead. But anyway, for Unbiased America, thank you for turning out. We've had a ton of viewers like normal, and we'll see you next time. Obviously next time there'll probably be a new mass shooting, and we'll comment on that. Have a good night.